what I see in the marketplace is the long term is definitely king or queen, but you do need some kind of income coming in. What's putting food on the table? What you're advocating is you got to almost have a blend of both. Maybe not 50-50, but certainly have some income coming in, even for bridging things when times are a little bit tight.
Yeah, 100%. And, I'm a pretty frugal person, like just naturally, but if I'm only living on my rentals, like I will survive, but I don't want to just survive. I want to thrive. So we do probably 5 to 7 transactions between flips or wholesales a year. I see so many of my peers who are like doing 50 flips a year to keep the lights on. I'm like, that is a nightmare. Just enough to be able to travel, pay my mortgage, have some nice meals, and keep buying real estate. Like, that's my goal.
I'm Garret Wong, and this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you? Jessie, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we start with, well, I was going to say, because I'm super excited to have another investor. I haven't had an investor, a real estate investor on the podcast for a little while, but one specifically very near and dear to my heart to talk about the BRRRR strategy. So with that, why don't you give the audience just a little teaser of your background, and then I'll ask you some questions so we can dig deeper into your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background started in Austin, Texas. I graduated college and I was told, society says buy a house, get a job, have kids, get married, all this stuff. I definitely didn't do all of it, but I did buy a little condo where I was renting out the rooms. I just was, I had my mortgage payment. I knew I didn't want to pay that much and I knew I had some rooms, so rented those out and was making some income. And then a few years go by with this method, and one of the roommates was my partner at the time, and we split. And in the matter of 2 weeks, I went from living my everyday life to having 4 college boys renting my beloved condo that I'd put my blood, sweat, and tears into. And those boys, I joke that they could have stopped my real estate career before it ever got started, but they were great. They were great residents. And so fast forward a couple years, I actually did this a few more times. I rented out rooms in the house I had purchased and had a long-term rental, did it again the next year. So I really had 2 long-term rentals and roommates where I was living, plus my W-2 job, and it was going pretty well.
So that's what they refer to in my world here as house hacking, but you did it not once, but twice. And
3
university,
times.
I
Yeah.
know we shouldn't have any predispositions about frat boys and stuff, but you obviously kept them in line.
Oh, yeah, I mean, well, the easy part, not easy, about the benefit of renting your own house is no one can pull over anything on you because you live there and you're very familiar with it. So, as far as, like, getting started, it is, I would say, a really easy transition to turn a previous home into a long-term or midterm rental.
Yeah, when I'm advocating for house hacking with clients or investors that reach out to me for advice, normally I'm just saying, okay, live in one side, rent out the other, live upstairs, rent out the basement, either or. Tell me what it's like to try to find roommates, knowing that you're going to be like living with a bunch of people, privacy, all those types of things.
Yeah, so I haven't done this for a long time, and I never would do it again, if that tells you anything.
Yeah.
I also was finding these people on Craigslist, which this is like 2012,
Yeah.
2014 range.
Before it was like, I know it was sketchy back then, but now it's like extremely sketchy.
It's, like, sketchy, but now at least, like, a lot of this is done on Facebook Marketplace where you
Yeah.
can maybe see their profile, see a little bit about them. Craigslist, you see whatever they wrote in an email, and you meet up for, coffee or drink or show them the house or, whatever you did, and you kinda hope for the best. And so, there was some security stuff. I would say overall, I'm a good judge of character, and I had throughout the years doing this, maybe 1 or 2 kinda weirdos, but nothing terrible happened, and one actually is, like, one of my best friends today, so that one worked out pretty good.
Okay. So you're in a W 2. What were you doing in your other job, in your other life?
So my whole background is project management. I have
Nice.
my PMP, like project management professional. So have done a variety of things, but all kind of project management based.
Okay, so that actually is a pretty good resume for a real estate investor to be a project manager, right?
It is a resume, like skill set wise, but if
Yeah.
you're gonna work for yourself, no one actually cares. Like it's not like it's on your resume and you're going to get hired because it's entrepreneurship, So I didn't apply to work for myself. You know what I mean?
No, of course.
Yeah,
I just meant the skill set to run a project, to run a reno. Um, to a certain extent, a lot of the project managers that I know, it's kind of almost like the ultimate entrepreneur job, right? Because you really like other than management saying, why isn't this done? You kind of have your team, you have your projects, you have your deadlines. Would you agree?
totally agree. Yeah, completely applicable skill set. When I initially did get my PMP, it was for my resume, and I'm just, have always thought, not a waste of time because obviously I learned a lot, but I'm like, I went to work for myself. It really didn't help me resume wise all that much, but skill set wise, totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So house hacking, what was the thought process there? Was it just save some money? What was did you have aspirations to do something bigger back then?
Nope. Back then, it was purely savvy problem solving. Like, I have a resource. Someone's willing to pay me for that resource. How, like, let's put it together. And between that and my W 2, after, I house hacked a few over the years, a couple, up to 3 doors. And between that and my W 2, I was all my bills paid and making, thousands of dollars a month, like on top of that. And so it was a real no-brainer. Unfortunately, I did not know that real estate could be a career. I this whole time thought this was just a side hustle. I thought, I'm solving problems, but didn't occur to me to be a career until 2018. I, at this point, had moved to Columbus, Ohio, and I was going to real estate meetups. I was in my local area. I was paying for some education. And then it really became clear because I was finally in the room with other real estate investors who were just normal people, completely normal people. And I thought, I don't know, I thought you had to be some like evil, rich, like terrible landlord. I didn't know that you could just be a normal person and also invest in real estate. So that was kind of my beginning to think like this could be a career.
Okay. So I find before I go a little bit further, I find the fact that you did house hacking with roommates really fascinating because I believe, and most investors would agree with me, that having a bunch of student roommates or things like that, cash flow wise, is far going to outperform, just renting out your 3 or 4 bedroom house to a family, right? Whether you're charging $500-600 per room times 5 rooms, that's 3 grand versus probably $2,000 for the house. But you combined both of those, and you inserted yourself in the situation, sort of as the Overwatch.
Yeah. And I, again, this was no like master plan by any means. I was just like, how, wait, you're going to pay me for this extra room and you're like not a psychopath? Like, let's do it.
Okay, so fast forward then. What was the sort of breakout moment that you would define in your real estate investing career? Was it just a certain type of property? What was kind of the turning point?
Yeah, turning point. So like I said, 2018 comes around. I've moved from Austin. I'm here in Columbus. It's an incredible real estate opportunity. I knew because even by 2016, when I left Austin, I had already pretty much been priced out. I mean, values had just risen so fast that what I was looking for just didn't really make sense anymore. And so I knew I was priced out, came to Columbus, had huge opportunities, but I actually moved here for another W-2. Everything I had
Okay.
learned so far, and I'm like, "Psh, psh, slap yourself, Jesse," because like, it was so obvious right in front of you, but I got another W-2, and I came here, was going to meetups, doing really well in the job, but kinda I came up for a review, and my pay increase wasn't in the budget, And yeah, yeah. So I just wasn't being valued for the work that I was putting in, which, in hindsight is a huge blessing. I mean, I'll share with you guys that I was asking for a $15,000 pay increase. Nothing. Like,
Nothing. Yeah.
is certified project manager. I was running multi-million dollar projects, asked for 15K, and I was turned down. And I'm telling you, like, biggest blessing. I'm so glad that they turned me down because I may still be working there and just doing real estate on the side, you know? And so that was a big turning point, but the first couple years when I was real estate full time, I was wholesaling. I was getting properties under contract, direct to seller. I was doing all my own marketing, literally cold calling, literally writing letters by hand. And I was selling everything. I was selling everything, keeping the proceeds, reinvesting it back into the business. But I knew that rentals was the way to go because, the first one I had bought at this point was 2012. And I'm looking at the value 6 years later and I'm like, hey, I need to learn how to keep these things. So it was January 2021 when I really kind of figured out the BRRRR method. I know you have a background here as well, and the BRRRR method to me, it solved every sort of other issue that I would have with, buying conventionally or flipping, or it just kind of was everything all in one package. And so I jumped on it. And that year, 2021, I bought 22 doors using this
Nice.
method.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was really off to the races from then. I was, prior to that, kind of spinning my wheels, trying a bunch of different things. Nothing was really going anywhere. And then I had a mentor who that January 2021 was like, Jesse, pick something. And so that's what I picked. And yeah, I haven't looked back.
Yeah, the BRRRR method. I know we're talking in acronyms, and we would assume people listening to the Investing to Win podcast would know, but why don't we break it down for the audience just in case we have a new listener? What exactly is the BRRRR method?
Yeah, so the BRRRR method, I think people have been doing it for a long time, but the term itself was coined on Bigger Pockets a decade or so ago. And the idea is that it's buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So you're buying a property that is under market value. It's distressed either through the asset itself or through the seller situation. There's some reason that the seller is willing to let it go below market value. So you buy that property and then you get it renovated. And we do standard renovations across the board. So same flooring, same paint, same fixtures, everything's the same. I have an incredibly standard portfolio. We're aiming for 10 years of low to no capital expenditures. So up front, I'm doing the roof, the windows, the furnace, all, everything to make it very easy to manage because we manage everything in house. So you get it renovated, you take this nice property out to the open market, you get it rented at or maybe even above fair market rent, because they're nice properties. And then we take that whole package that we just created to a long-term lender and we say, hey, how much would you loan us against this new asset? They get it appraised. We'll typically lend 75, maybe 80% of that appraised value. And then the idea is that if you purchased correctly and you did the right renovations, that long-term loan will actually pay off any down payment, any short-term loan, any holding costs that you may have incurred along the way. And then you own this asset with little to none of your own money and, 20-25% equity in the deal.
Yeah, and you're talking also about the renovation costs all built in if you have purchased correctly.
Correct. Yep. So our lender is paying 100% of our renovation cost across the board.
Yeah, and I scaled significantly over 10 years. 75 doors only using the BRRRR method and only using my own money. I never even used OPM, other people's money. What was your scaling strategy? I mean, I looked at your bio. It says 11 to 70 doors in 36 months, which
Yeah.
is way faster than I did it. Enlighten us.
It was wild. I will say it was a little bit crazy, but the first couple years that I was buying seriously with the BRRRR method, I actually still was wholesaling. So I was doing my own direct to seller marketing, which made the the transition very easily. You know, my marketing company was selling to my rental company, and I owned both sides of the deal, which I could negotiate on my own behalf. I wasn't going to sell it to someone else. I already knew I'd buy it. So that was super streamlined. Since I stopped wholesaling, I stopped doing direct to seller. I just buy now from the MLS or other wholesalers. And it has slowed the pace down a little bit, but I'm also not managing a wholesale company, which is like all consuming.
Yeah.
And so the process, I knew what I wanted and I went out and found that deal. And so as soon as I would find it, it was a really, I mean, I'm 2-week closes if that. And then I was using the same contractor and I still am regardless of where I find the deal. Same contractor, same handy people, all the same HVAC crews, you know, roofers, everything is just the same. I My lawn company, my basement company, and they've been with me 3, 4 years now. And so that saves a ton of time going out, building these relationships, reinventing the wheel. It was work up front, but I mean, obviously wouldn't change it now.
No, I mean, clearly, project manager having processes and systems, go figure, right? Um, no, but in all seriousness, like wholesalers make a lot of money or they can, but I mean, I was a realtor, okay? That's kind of how I did it. In 2007, I mean, I'll never do this again. I bought 15 doors, 15 singles in a single month.
In a
Okay.
month?
In a month.
Oh, that's
It
a lot.
was the
That is
worst
a lot.
thing ever because, I mean, the deals are there. And then I remember being at my lawyer's and just paperwork. Like, you know how much paperwork there is for one deal.
Yeah.
And these are all conventional mortgages. We're going to be burring everything. We had a large line of credit at that point against one of our larger properties. So we had renovation money, but 15 properties, 15 sets of keys, 15 meter reads. And then I would say 10 of them sat vacant for 6 weeks because I just didn't have enough time. Um, you know, I think people have to realize that the deals still will be there.
They will be.
I think that's the thing, but it's almost like a drug. You're addicted to just chasing. This is a deal. I can't. There won't be another one, right? Would you agree with that?
We call it deal-itis. It's like
Okay.
a sickness.
Yeah, it is a sickness. What I was getting my point though is as a realtor making a lot of money or a wholesaler making a lot of money, all of that stuff is very transactional, right? Compared to what I used to call, slow nickel versus fast dime. Fast
Mhm.
dime being, the wholesaling and the real estate. Um, so enlighten the audience just about transactional versus the buy and hold.
Yeah. Okay. So transactional obviously has a place in any business. We are still, I'm not going out doing direct to seller marketing, but if a deal falls in my lap, I do a couple wholesales a year. I do a couple flips a year. And the transactional, it's not my first choice, but it's very important to have. And even though it is transactional, if it's a seller who has maybe one property, you may check in with them on the holidays for the next couple years and then never talk to them out of that. But outside of that, but everything else, it's relationship based, just the same. I had the probably top 5, 7 buyers who would buy a majority of my contracts. And so I wasn't starting all these buyer relationships again. I'd be like, "Hey, which entity do you want to use?" Because I know the 3 you're going to pick from because I sell you a lot of deals. And so it still can be relationship based, even being transactional. And even with some sellers, we have one seller who I've been working with for years. When I met her, they had pushing 30 doors, and I think they're about 11, 9, 10, 11 right now, and we've, either purchased or wholesaled, and she knew what I was doing, the majority of her portfolio over the years, and that was all relationship based. So, transactional obviously, like, is super important, cash infusion, you can do it in a relationship based way. I'm still always gonna lean towards keep it as long as you can. Keep the asset.
Yeah, I think like I've had some big names on the podcast. One that comes to mind who's like does a lot of birds is Sam Prim
Okay.
at Faster Freedom, right? But even Sam has a lot of the other, some flipping, like, there's just, I think what I see in the marketplace is the long term is definitely king or queen, but you do need some kind of income coming in. Like, even I know a lot of people who are putting together syndications, which is great, millions of dollars in 3 to 5 years if you're the GP, the general partner, but what's putting food on the table? What you're advocating is you gotta almost have a blend of both. Maybe not 50-50, but certainly have some income coming in even for bridging things when times are a little bit tight.
Yeah, 100%. And, I'm a pretty frugal person, like just naturally, but I like to travel. I like to do all these things. And if I'm only living on my rentals, like I will survive, but I don't want to just survive. I want to thrive. So we do a couple, uh, probably 5 to 7 transactions between flips or wholesales a year. Super small team. It's me and one full-time employee, and my wife is in the business a little bit, but outside of that, like, it's really kind of us. And so we I don't have to do I see so many of my peers who are like doing 50 flips a year to keep the lights on. I'm like, that is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we're
that's
we're just
crazy.
doing just enough to be able to travel, pay my mortgage, have some nice meals, and keep buying real estate. Like, that's my goal.
Yeah, I think, for the audience, real estate, everybody thinks, "Oh, let's go into real estate, you're automatically gonna get rich," and it's not an automatic, and it's not a for sure thing, but it's long-term, slow growing wealth, right? So, therefore, people who are going after that cash flow thinking that they're gonna be again, you see all of this on Instagram, right? Flashing the jets and the cars and the Ferraris.
They're all
It's
rented, Garrett, they rent them. They don't even own them.
they're standing in front of somebody else's and taking a
Yeah,
photo, right?
yeah.
No, it's so true. And so I don't think people should really think about real estate. I always advocate it's about equity, the cash flow. Of course, you want to be positive. Really, the wealth for me comes when those mortgages are paid off, and then it's like, okay, now instead of getting 200-300 bucks a house, and I've got 20 houses, now I'm getting 1200-1300 dollars a house because those $1,000 mortgages or more are gone.
Yep.
I mean, so you agree?
Oh, I 100% agree. And, I always say real estate gives you options, and if you don't buy it today, you don't have the option 5, 10, 15 years down the road to refinance if you need to sell if you need to, maybe sell a bigger property and pay off 5 small ones, and now those are completely cash flow. It's the mortgage is gone, just like you said. And so you don't have those options if you don't take the chance today. And everyone thinks that they have to come out of the gate on all these home runs, and you're not going to build a business on home runs. If I was buying home runs out of our 75 doors, probably 200 plus transactions, I'd 10, 15. I would be I'd be worse off if I was only buying the home runs.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, how many times, so I'll tell a bit of a story in my management company because we manage like 600 doors. It's been 25 years, and we're doing a lot of work for some private lenders. And when I don't mean like a trust company, I mean literally a group of like lawyers or physicians. And they regularly give us these completely horrible properties. And the stories of these are that there's these flippers who went to them, ran out of money, couldn't finish the project. And for the life of me, I just can't understand why those flippers didn't just put a renter in place and wait it out. Because that's the worst case scenario. Okay, I'm going to not make my 20, 30, 40K on a flip. I have to put a renter in place and hold it. Maybe you're paying a little bit higher interest, but the equity is still building. The tenant is still paying down that mortgage. And arguably, if you've purchased properly in the right market, you could wait for 2 or 3 years and it's already appreciated by 10 or 15%.
Yep. We call that a long burr. And we'll have one where, I may end up leaving 20K in a deal. And depending if I have a prepayment on that loan 3 years out, I could refi again, pull that 20K out. And then it was a perfect burr. It took 2 refis. And so you get those options if you own it.
I've already said my biggest mistake was buying 15 properties in 4 weeks. What was your biggest mistake that kind of is at the forefront of your mind when I ask that
Oh
question?
gosh. My first one, like hands down, when I first started, we self-manage everything in-house. You own a management company, you know everything that goes into
Oh,
it.
yeah. It's not a very nice industry.
It's not. I will say, like, I don't have clients. My clients are the residents, whereas you
Yeah,
have clients as owners.
and
So
residents. I have 2.
yeah, exactly right. You have 2 sets of clients, yeah, and so I only have 1 set of clients, and the other one is myself. So that makes it a little bit easier, less people to please. Um, but the biggest mistake when I first started was my screening process on residents was
Mm.
laughable, laughable. I'm like, "Can you breathe and sign your name? Like,
Yeah.
come on now."
They showed up. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
sign here.
yeah. They showed up and they can move in tomorrow. Like, that sounds
Yeah.
great. And so I was not doing any I mean, at the time, I probably thought I was, but now, compared to our process, is like, I wasn't doing anything. And we had someone move in, didn't pay a penny. Of course, she did pay the deposit, but first month's rent did nothing.
Professional tenant. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. It got worse. So the house next door was for sale on the MLS. Somehow the listing agent got my cell phone, gave me a call, and was like, "Hey, there's a whole lot of activity going on at this house, and it's actually preventing us from selling our house." Like,
Oh, boy.
everyone, it was that bad. Everyone who's come to see it has been like, "Oh no, I'm not going to live there because the neighbors." So I go down there, I find out that there's basically 15 people in and out of the house at all times. And it became like a little drug hub. And in a matter of 3 weeks, this is like before the first rent was even due, kind of thing. And so I put the eviction, yeah, I put her 3-day notice up, and I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens. I go back and check. I drive past the house. All of the windows upstairs have been shot out by the SWAT team. The house was raided. Yeah, I mean, this was like when you say biggest mistake, like hands down. And then I look back, y'all, her proof of income was handwritten receipts from like her cleaning company that clearly it was all in the same pen. It clearly was all done.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's like just if someone sent me that now, I would say
yeah.
denied. Yeah. And so I moved this girl in and it ended up being $10,000 worth of damage. And thankfully it was an insurance claim, but the I just so avoidable. If only I had just tried a little bit harder.
You're bringing back some bad memories for me. I remember because I'm dating myself here, but I was back in 2008, and I think it was on my second property. And, the vacancy rates were a little high, but certainly not high enough that every time I answered the phone, I would actually drive and pick up the tenant and take them to the showing. Like the VIP treatment, right? And then I was working on the property and it'd be like, "Oh, you're interested? Sure, I can come pick you up if you don't want to take a bus or a cab." And I drive there and drive back, like just ridiculous, right? But I have been taken advantage so many times. I can't get away with that, obviously, with my property management clients. But no, I think I always teach screening courses. And the biggest thing for me is do not trust your gut instinct. Make sure you
Mhm.
have numbers, a process, and application. Agree?
Oh, totally. We have a resident or like an applicant scorecard, and it takes all the emotion out, and you're looking at like numerical time at job, credit score. We look at time at it's a lot of us for is
It's an
time.
algorithm.
Yeah, and a lot of things for me is time. It's like if you prove you can stay at a job, if you prove you can stay at a past residence, that means you've paid on time. That means you've taken care of the property. And so that we do put quite a bit of weight on longevity in, previous housing and reason for moving. We kind of have a little score on that too. So I try to take, like you said, all the emotion out of it. And there is some element of gut instinct. Like if you have people who are comparable otherwise, and obviously fair housing, no violations there. But
No, for sure.
yeah. And so if you just have a kind of a gut instinct, knock on wood, other than this girl that I definitely shouldn't have rented to, I've had a pretty good like gut check on who we rent to for the most part.
Yeah, I think I try to I always say emotions have no place in business, right? And I always teach that a rental property is a business. I don't care whether you have 1 or you have 70, 75. It doesn't matter. The rental property is your inventory and you have customers, and so it's just happens to be a month-to-month business, and if you use gut instinct to let somebody in rather than processes, I mean, you're gonna get burned multiple
100%.
times,
Yeah.
multiple times. Let's get back to scaling because I know for me and scaling from like 1 to 70 doors was like I said, I did it all traditionally, right? Very, very slow, which why it took me 10 years. What strategies did you use to scale so quickly?
So having that like line between my wholesale and rentals was made it, I don't want to say very easy, but it definitely was easier because I knew, right, I was searching for the deals I wanted. Outside of that, we use the same contractors, the same handy people, the same roofers, and everyone is identical. We're using the same flooring, the same paint, the same. I'm creating a very standard rental portfolio. And when you say, like treat it like a business, to me, a house is a widget. It's just a widget. And I'm just
Yep.
building the same widget over and over and over. I'm using the same lender on the front side, on the back, and same lender on the back side. I'm just doing the same thing over and over and over. And I think people get into a trap where you're just trying to be creative, or we call it HGTV trap, and you want to do something special on every house. And it's like we don't have time for that. If I'm going to do this at scale and at pace, and if I'm going to manage it long term, like, that's and don't get me wrong, like, we're providing clean, safe, affordable housing.
Yep.
They look nice, but they're just not special.
Well, you don't need the gold plated whatever, right? Home Depot, IKEA, whatever it is. I mean, I have that stuff in my own house. There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with
same.
it. It's just standardized, right? It's nice, it's clean, it commands the most amount of rent for the littlest amount of investment that you can. There's
Yep,
nothing wrong with that.
yep. And we try to stay on trends, like, 2 or 3 years ago, we switched to black hardware, but, like, outside of that, I'm not getting crazy. I'm not we switched up our paint from a little bit more, like, gray, which was kind of, the 2000s, to we're a little, like, lighter now, but it's a little bit darker. You don't want white because that will get beat up. But yeah, and so we've, like, made subtle changes, but it's never on a per property basis by any means.
So when you say same lender on the front, same lender on the back, I mean, are you using private on the front, traditional on the back?
So we're using hard or private upfront on the purchase, depending on available funds and timeline. I mean, there's some the seller needs to close in literally 3 days, and I can get title back in two, and I can get my lenders set up, and we can close in 3 days. There's others where maybe they have uh they're buying a new home and they want to move out on a certain date, so we have a little more time, so I can use uh hard money there. It's kind of like give or take on either hard or private depending on the situation. And then on the backside, I have pretty much used the same lender. I keep trying to beat her. Like, I keep trying to beat her terms and I just can't. And so we're doing 6 with her right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, of course you wouldn't go private on the backside. Any words of advice for somebody starting out? Because I mean, I think the average person understands what a traditional lender is. You're going to go to your bank, you're going to have your 20% down, even on a BRRRR. But it's very, and at least it was for me as well. Private lending seems scary. It's loan sharkish. You're talking about hard money loans, 12, 15, 20%. Speak to the audience about how to even get started. How do you crack that code
You're saying, like, on the
on the
purchase?
front side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so on the purchase, if you are a brand new investor, first deal, I'm not gonna lie that there you're gonna have to talk to a lot of lenders to find someone who will do it. We have a preferred lender that we share a lot of our with our students, that will work with first time investors, and we're seeing 11% right now annualized, 1 to 2 points depending on purchase price because they do have a minimum, so it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, it's not bad, and so that would be a really, really good first step, and I like to recommend to first-time investors or early investors, use hard money versus private because private money is easier, but that's almost a bad thing when you're getting started because hard money, they're gonna run a valuation. They're gonna make sure that the property is worth what you think it's worth. They're gonna look at your rehab scope. They're gonna make sure that it's in line, that you didn't miss anything because think about who they're protecting. They're protecting their own money. And so
Mhm.
they do due diligence on the deal. Now, if you're working with private money, who's literally just your friends and family who, may have a 401k or they sold their house or whatever and they've come into some money and they can lend to you as well, but they're just regular people. They often don't know outside of, "Hey, how much are you buying it for? And what's the address?" Like, they don't really know to ask a lot of these questions, so if you don't know, you could really get yourself in trouble just going straight into private money. So I actually recommend to our students to, start with hard money. I'll put my set of eyes on everything as well, but that's, I think, a really a much safer start once you get going and you know what you're doing. Private money is amazing because again, like I will text a lender and say, "Hey, we're about to buy one. Purchase a rehab all in, we're at 175. Are you got it? Are you available? You want to send the money?" And we'll, same rate, same term. We do the same thing. I create the documents, send them to title, have the money in a couple days.
Do you find that, or have you ever used hard money for the down payment, private for the purchase and the, construction?
So a lot of our hard money lenders, they're doing 100% construction. So I'm not having to raise money for the construction. I have never personally raised the down payment with let me back up. If you're using a hard money lender, a common term would be 90% of the purchase, 100% of the rehab is covered by the lender. Now, closing costs, points, that is going to leave you with, we see about 10 to 15% down. Now, on a BRRRR, the idea is that at the refi, you're getting that back, but it does leave you with some amount of down payment at the time of closing. Now, I fund my own down payments. Like we fund it out of our own pocket. I
Sure.
don't charge myself interest because it's all in the same business. I too complicated. I know a lot of investors do, but um if you don't have that money, you can go out and raise private money in second position like behind the
Right,
hard money
right.
lender. Yep. So you can raise that money. And here in the Midwest, it's 10, 15, maybe 20K, the types of deals that we're doing. And so that you should be able to raise that from, I don't want to say almost anyone, but a lot of people, they don't have the funds to lend on a full project, but they have 20K and they want to kind of get in the game. So it is pretty common to raise that down payment from someone who maybe couldn't fund the whole thing, but they want to get involved.
Yeah, I think where I was going with that is, depending on the level of trust, there's not some people might not want to be in second position behind the mortgage because if it defaults, then almost everything is eaten up in fees and the person left in second almost has nothing. So I found that the value of your relationships with the hard money second lender is really, really key.
Yes. Yeah. And I actually do lend to other people in second position. Like I help people fund down payments. And so I understand the risks, but second position is definitely riskier than first. And I will say I do charge accordingly.
Of course.
Yeah, to account for that risk. But it's a model that a lot of people use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about asset classes.
Mm.
I did almost everything in singles, duplexes, triplexes. I think the largest one I had was a 7 unit townhouse complex. What about you? What does your portfolio look like?
So actually pretty similar. And we're right at that 70, 75 unit. range as well. So I think probably our portfolios are very similar. I have 2 6-unit buildings that are totally separate than each other, and a 4-unit, and I've sold a 4-unit in the past that we had for years, and everything else is single family.
Interesting.
I know, I've actually randomly never owned a duplex, which they're everywhere here, so I don't know how that's happened. I'm gonna go buy one this year just to just to
Just to
say
say
I
you have
have,
it,
yeah.
just to say you did it.
Yeah, so all
Um,
small apartments or single family.
okay. And any inkling in the future to scale into multifamily?
Like, large apartments? Is that
Yeah, three-story walk-ups, 22, 40 units, 50 units, that type of
Yeah,
thing.
I think I'd be interested in maybe 30 and under, but I mean, and maybe that's just the middle ground, and maybe I kinda get good at that and then wanna go bigger, but right now that seems achievable, and, again, I'm still going to manage everything in-house, and if that means building out an entire property management company because our portfolio is so large, then, like, so be it, but
Mhm.
I know so many investors who buy these big apartments, and they go out and they hire property management, and if you can find the right one, and I'm sure you guys do great for your clients.
Uh, we make our mistakes too. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
but
not going to sell that here, you know?
I think when you make a mistake yourself, it's just easier to digest and you can learn from it, but I actually did have property management in place right around that, like, 20, 25, 30 unit. I was getting totally overwhelmed, and so I was like, what do I do? I gotta hire property management," and we didn't even make it a year together before I brought everything back in-house and really kinda put the systems in place myself. So, I am interested in those next kinda levels, but it would be something as long as the property management can, like, scale up to match.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Jesse, because I have obviously 600 doors that under management with about 325 separate investor clients. So they're exactly like you and I, right? They own one or two houses. And when somebody comes to me brand new, I'm always like, what are your long-term goals? Because maybe they live in my city. And I'm like, you need to manage like up to three on your own
Mhm.
because you need to keep us accountable. Or even if you're not going with us, there's no reason why somebody can't, unless you're traveling for work. And even then, with tech and AI now and platforms, there's almost no excuse.
Right.
So I would say to anybody out there listening who wants to become part-time full any kind of real estate investor, like manage your own property to start, because otherwise, number one, you won't know how to manage the manager, and number two, maybe what you're um, maybe you're being unreasonable for your expectations on that
Mm.
manager because you don't know what it's like to choose a bad tenant and how fast you can get a cleaner in place and what happens when that no heat call comes in at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know? So I hear what you're saying. And I think it's really difficult once you've managed your own portfolio to use traditional property management because they're just not going to take the same amount of care. It can be close depending how the size of the company, but it just won't be the same as you doing it yourself.
I have said no one's ever going to care about your asset like you do. I
Yep.
just period flat out, and it's not anything malicious. With the property management, no one's doing it to get you or anything like that. It's just it, no one is ever going to care like you do. Even I have a girl that works for me full time, just doing our property management, and she's great, but she's never gonna care as much as I do. The thing is I have more direct oversight than I would with a management company, so it puts me at ease a little bit more, but, I mean, ultimately, I'm totally with you. You should at least start, and then maybe you figure out it's not for you and you're willing to let go of a bit of control and hand it over, but I wasn't willing to do that.
Yeah, I was actually just in a meeting this morning with one of my staff, and it's a brand new client. I think it's been maybe a week and a half, and we haven't gotten on the market yet. And the reason is because the cleaners, there's something wrong with the keys. They came, there's something, right? But what I told, my property manager was if this was your property and the cleaners couldn't get in and it's been a week and a half already,
Dr
I know what I would do.
Yeah, you
I'd
drive your
be like,
butt
I'm
over
going and
there.
I'm just going to clean it on the weekend,
Yeah.
right? And it's going to be advertised on Monday. Like that's just the way we are, right? So it's just really hard to teach that in any business, right? So that's why I think, yeah, I think you're on the right path for sure.
Well, appreciate it. And it's been so much more successful. Like, I mean, our numbers just speak for themselves. Not only saving the expense of property management, because I pay a full time employee. It
Hmm.
comes out to about 60% of what I would pay for management and our portfolio
Absolutely.
size. And I feel like we're getting better care. And so ultimately, like, I'm with you and I'm never gone back.
Yeah, no, we have a product that we have started selling, which is actually our entire software stack. There's about five platforms that we've kind of married together.
Oh, that's
So when
cool.
I have a larger investor, probably about 75 to 100 doors, they're already saving, like you said, 20, 30K by just having their own house. And then, of course, by us going in and teaching them how to do that, especially if they're expanding to 150, 200 doors, they're saving well over 100K by, and then keeping it in house. And then if the software is doing its job, then they can go out and do what they're supposed to, which is finding more deals rather than dealing with broken toilets.
Yep. And I've said that for a long time. My best use of my time and energy and networking is finding deals. And so it took me a long time to let go of some of the day-to-day stuff. And even now, I still catch myself. I'm like in the software. I'm like, no, just don't text them. She can do it. She can do
Leave it,
it.
just leave it.
And just leave it. It's gonna be fine. And so I even catch myself doing that. But yeah, my best time is spent acquiring.
Yeah. Before we stop here, I wanted to give you a chance to expand a little bit because you've mentioned your students a few times. What are you doing to give back in the education space?
Yeah, so great question, thank you. I have a mastermind program. It's called Rentals Made Easy. I actually just launched the book that is the entire process, but this is the book of the mastermind that people learn every single thing that we've talked about today, from buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat.
Nice.
And then it's not just a hobby, but also building the business, building the relationships, making it scalable, getting your entity set up. So, asset protection and all of that. It is essentially every mistake that I've made throughout the years put into a program so you guys don't have to go and make all those same mistakes.
Yeah, no, failure is a really, really good teacher. And if I could do anything over again, I would have tried to learn from others rather than just going through the school of hard knocks.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
they both have their place because even with mentorship and masterminds, like, you're still going to make mistakes. It's
Yep.
just how can we minimize them? How can we get ahead of them? And if you think, I'm going to join this mastermind and never make a mistake, like, obviously that's not true either. But how can you just cut them down and kind of condense the timeline? And you and I, yes, I maybe bought faster, but I had same amount of time before that where I wasn't really doing anything, and we
Yeah.
ended up at the same place, you know what I mean? So, I just was paralyzed for a long time, and I think a mastermind could have kickstarted that a little bit sooner.
Yeah, I'll even add to that, Jesse, that good coaching or masterminds or wherever you get your information from rather than trying to do it, just willy-nilly, it just collapses time,
Collapse
right?
time.
And that's the biggest thing that money can't buy. We only have so much time. So if you can save yourself, like in my case, 15 years, in your case, even a couple of years in your journey, like why would you not pay to have that done?
Right,
Right?
right.
Never mind the mistakes and the tens of thousands that you could save yourself by not having the same mistakes that your mastermind has,
Yep. And
imparted
we
upon
have
you.
we have a call every single week where we're just looking at students' deals, and I tell them the purpose of this call, like, they bring their deals, and I'm like, I'm trying to shoot this deal down. That's my goal. If I can stop you from buying a bad deal, that's better than helping you buy a good deal. And, if it's good and we can't find any holes in it, let's go buy it. But if I can find holes in it, like, that's where you get the most value, is stopping you from buying something bad. I've bought plenty of bad deals that I've lost money, have created headaches, have taken my time and energy away from buying good deals. And so if I can stop you from doing that, any investment you've made has paid for itself hands down.
You know, you just reminded me of something because I think as human beings, but particularly real estate investors, we look for the best in everything,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We go see a property, it stinks like cat pee. We can see I'm going to knock down this wall, change the carpet, blow out the kitchen. So I think real estate investing is all about being an optimist. But on the other side of it, I think the best advice that we can give is something that my business coach always says is, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can happen here? Oh, I'm going to buy the property. It's going to be upside down. The interest rates are going to go through the roof because of what's happening right now at the recording time of this podcast. Where am I going to be? And if the answer is, yeah, you know what? I'm doing my numbers at 5%, 7%, 8% interest once I burr it, and it's still going to be breaking even, then great, right? If I go into private money and something happens, I lose my contractor, permits, whatever, and I have to hold on to this for a whole year, what's the worst that can happen? How can I, you know, salvage those relationships with my private lenders? Because it's super important. You never want to burn anybody. Can I pay people back? So I don't think real estate investors really do enough of worst case scenario.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And again, it's that deal-itis. I look at, like, between my deals and students' deals, like, dozens a week, and some of them I'm like, "You are forcing this." Like,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
this is made up in your head. Like, let's get some concrete evidence. They're like, well, I think I could rent it for $2,000. I'm like, "N we're at 1,400." Like,
Yeah.
look at the comps, you know what I mean? Like, show
Yeah.
me 2,000 and we can do it, and we can underwrite it that way, but yeah, if you're underwriting at 5% long-term money, sorry, that's not happening. Like, so I check all that stuff for people, and again, my goal is to poke holes.
No, love it. Well, I will definitely put all of that information in the show notes for you.
I appreciate it.
I have one final question that I ask every guest that comes onto the podcast, and you're not getting away with it either.
Okay.
So, this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you?
Ooh, how do I define success and what does winning look like? My I don't wanna say expectations. I'm a very simple person. W You see the Ferraris and the mansions, and, like, that is not what I want. And if you want that, more power to you. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, can I go for a ride? Because, like, it seems fun for a day, but that is not who I am or what I want. To me, success is waking up, focusing on my health, focusing on my family. I love cooking. I love the gym. Like, finding time to do all those things, spend time with people I love. I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything revolutionary here. Like, just spend my time the way that I want to. And I have, a girl that works for me on the education side and on the rental side, and I pour a lot into them, and I have the time to do it, to bring them up with me. Just kind of make everyone that I'm around just better. And that to me is so valuable, and giving back any way I can.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've really enjoyed finally speaking about real estate investing for a change. Not that talking about crypto and other business strategies isn't good, but BRRRRs are very close to my heart. So
Yes.
thanks for bringing back that
Yeah,
nostalgia.
of course. They're still alive and well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Garrett.
All right. Thanks.